work for, which I liked. But he threw in an extra demand that I didn't expect, which is about halfway through this process. He was coming back from doing a radio interview, and he drove his car off Route 2, turned upside down, and next thing you know, he's in the hospital with 37 broken bones in his back and his neck and so forth. And when I got the word, I mean, like, you know, being a writer, the first thing I think of, there goes the story. You know? So after I realized he was going to survive, I felt good about that. So then they sent him to this rehab place. So Joanne said, you're going to go overseas? I said, yeah, for sure. And I knew he was a big fan of Don Shula's, and I'm a big fan of football coaches who can give inspirational speeches. So I went over there, and there he's there. He's not feeling that great still, you know. And I said, what am I going to say to him? And immediately came to mind what it had to be. And I walked in and I said, Upton, you can't die in the middle of this book. You got to get out of this bed. What the hell's wrong with you? And he did. He rallied. It's been great fun to do the book, and hopefully you all will enjoy it. And he and I will just sort of kick around a few stories for you for the next few minutes, and then hopefully you'll have a few questions. Thanks everybody for coming. I know you have a lot of things to do, so we'll get into it. You know,
it's a full moon, so don't go anywhere.
It is a full moon. That's right. You know, we opened the book writing about October 11th, 1959, which was a Sunday morning, pro football morning. Upton was a young lad of 22, living with his dad and going to LaSalle. His father was the commissioner of the NFL at that time and was heading off to Franklin Field in Philadelphia, where he had played as a great college quarterback at the University of Pennsylvania, through the first forward pass in Rose Bowl history. Later was a bad coach and a good owner of the Eagles.
You're right about that?
And they played in Franklin Field, and now was the commissioner, and he was going over to watch the two teams that he owned at one point in time, the Eagles and the Steelers. And they were playing, and young Upton was hitting him up for free tickets, of course, and was heading over there. In near the end of that game, which was a stirring game, something happened that changed not only Upton's life, but certainly the whole history of professional football, and Upton can recall that day.
Well, one of the things I really want to say about it, again, self-reliance, is great day. Got all my freeloader friends there. Life is good. Playing basketball at LaSalle, and as Ron said, never got 2 feet off the floor. and near the end of the game, two great Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Bobby Lane and Norman Van Bachlen, going against each other. Eagles driving the length of the field. 2 minutes left. Van Bachlen throws a touchdown pass to Tommy McDonald. True in life. Crosses the goal line, and somebody hands me a binocular and said, there's a guy in a brown suit across the way, and it looks like he's fallen over. And Ron, I will tell you, the first chapter will really catch you, because I have difficulty still to this day reading it, because I saw it, I jumped out of the stands, and as Ron explains it, I was really in great shape as an athlete. Played all the time, basketball very demanding. And I found myself, as I'm running across the field, really out of breath as he explains it. Get to the other side, get up in the stands, and my father is, it looks like he's at the end. They run down the Steeler bench. The only funny thing about it, if you want to say it's funny, they run down the Steeler bench and they say, go down there and get some of the goddamn oxygen. Let's see if we can save him. So they go to the Steeler bench, run up with the oxygen, put it on them, and it doesn't work. and if you can find humor in death, somebody yells out, typical goddamn Steelers. They put the thing on it doesn't work. Steelers always lose, they can't do anything. So that day he dies. But the interesting part of it, and the part that I will always remember I was telling Ron this, on how to deal with people in life. We're walking out just before the game, and his old center, Bull Lipsky, was there, who was actually my babysitter, who got $5 extra a week to take care of one of the Bell kids. That was it.
As Tom Brady would do today.
Taking care of everybody. And he was down on his luck. He had no money, and he said, Bert, can you give me some money? And my father went into his money clip, which I still have to this day. I have it here tonight. And he took out $200. He took out everything he had, and he gave it to him, and he said, I'll see you tomorrow. Of course, that never happened. But the kindness of one of the most powerful people in all of sports to his down-in-the-luck players, which they don't do today because it's a different world, was the last time I saw him alive. So the other part of the story, a lot of people never knew, Art Rooney, great owner, Hall of Fame person who used to send my father $200 in an envelope to make the payroll for the players. In those days, somebody said, what happens if they steal the envelope? Bert Bell screwed. There's nothing we can do about it. Anyway, Rooney was so upset, he ran up the trolley tracks, not realizing the hospital was only a couple of blocks from there. He was almost run over and killed. 2 owners in one day would have been pretty bad. Then later on in the week, again, having to accept what the life deals with you, we're at home getting ready for the funeral, and a call comes in from the Philadelphia National Bank that basically the head of it got on the line and said, I need to tell you that your father has signed a deal to buy back the Philadelphia Eagles for $930,000. He secretly, he never told any of us, was going to retire at the end of the year, and they said, we're sorry, we can't let the deal go through. So your father dies, you lose the team that you really wanted, and now it's, you better get going in life, son, because there ain't going to be anybody around to help you. Bert Bell's dead, long live Bert Bell, but let's move on. So that's the opening chapter, and I think as difficult as it is for me, he really captures it.
Well, the thing that was, of course, out of every tragedy, there's also opportunity of a sort, as happened in this case with Upton. He now had to make a decision. What's he going to do in life? He wanted to be in football. Obviously had his dad bought the Eagles. He would now be the owner of the Eagles, and I'd be gladly working for him in the personnel department. Great, but it didn't work out that way. So Carroll Rosenblum, who had played for his dad at the University of Pennsylvania as a football player, and then became very successful in business during the war, and Bert Bell convinced him to buy what became the Baltimore Colts. At the time, they were a down-and-out franchise, and they couldn't find an owner. And Mr. Bell believed that local ownership, as we found out here in New England when Bob Kraft bought the Patriots, is really the best way to go. Convinced Carroll to buy the team. And the one thing he said to him a number of times was, something happens to me, you have to look out for my kids. And to his credit, he did. There's a lot of things that are in the book about Carroll that make you think he wasn't exactly an Eagle Scout. But he certainly came through here, and the next thing you know, Upton was a towel boy for the Colts during training camp and doing many other things. This was 1960. They had won the World Championship 2 years in a row. They had played in the famous '58 championship game, the overtime game that really made the league and changed everything because most of you are too young to remember this, but I remember the Ed Sullivan Show. Everybody in America watched the Ed Sullivan Show in those days. And because the game went into overtime, it was the first, one of the first nationally televised games, and it bled into quote-unquote prime time. So all these people turned on their TVs to see Ed Sullivan and Topo Gigio and all that stuff. Elvis, that's right. And instead they saw a bunch of guys playing football, and it was a dramatic moment late in the game as they drive for the winning score of the Colts, and they win. And a year later, people had begun to buy a lot more television. It was post-World War II. Next thing you know, they're watching pro football. So Upton moves into pro football in 1960, comes back to go back to college for a year, but had already left his heart in Baltimore, and quickly left school a year later, went back to work full-time, initially in the ticket office, but ultimately in the personnel department, where he built 2 Super Bowl teams. And one of the things that he was involved in, it's amazing, he was at the 1958 championship game his father. He was at the 1948 famous first nationally televised game.